Topping today's news, a mother and her boyfriend spent their first night on remand in connection to sexual abuse and illegal abortion of her 11-year-old daughter. The government and BPL taking steps to reach 30% renewable energy supply by 2030, and the Bahamas tourism numbers looking to soar past 8 million visitors by the end of the year. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Jcn Saunders. This is your JCN Evening News. It is a pleasure to have you join us. In news from the courts, a 45-year-old man and his 40-year-old girlfriend spent their first night on remand at the Bahamas Department of Corrections after they were arraigned in the magistrate's court on Monday on sexual abuse and aggravated harm charges, respectively. The duo, whose names are being withheld to protect the identity of the victim, appeared before Magistrate Shaka Seville. The man was charged with 5 counts of unlawful sexual intercourse with an 11-year-old girl, the daughter of the 40-year-old woman. Prosecutors alleging that he had sexual relations with the defendant 5 times between April and June of 2022 and March and May of this year, which allegedly resulted in the child becoming pregnant. The mother, for her part, is accused of failing to report the matter to the police, as well as aggravated causing harm for the purpose of an abortion and performing an illegal abortion on a minor between August 11th and 12th, when she allegedly gave her daughter pills to induce an abortion. The pair was not required to enter a plea to the charges. The duo returns to court on January 15th for the service of a voluntary bill of indictment. As the country suffers through an increase in sexual crimes against children so far this year, activist groups continue to advocate for stronger penalties for perpetrators who commit these crimes. Founder of Rise Bahamas, Tennille Burrows, says there should be a minimum sentence.
And we realize that there are maximum sentences for crimes. A crime of rape would have a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. I've never once seen someone go to jail for raping a child and get a life prison sentence. So we want to say, if you're not going to give a life sentence for raping a child, you need to have at least a sentence in place, something like 20 years or something like that. That's sufficient.
Ms. Burrows is also calling for rehabilitation programs for the offenders.
Once perpetrators are charged and jailed, we need to ensure that they have access to proper rehabilitation programs, because we see that there are a lot of repeat offenders with sex offenders in the Bahamas. We know that Marco Archer was not taken and abducted and murdered arbitrarily. He was murdered by someone who had already been convicted of a number of crimes against children. So we have to look at that and figure out ways to, again, prevent crimes against children, as opposed to just the punitive side of it and imposing mandatory minimum sentence. For instance, a 20-year minimum sentence for raping a child is a good first step, in our opinion.
Earlier this month, a 9-year-old girl was sexually assaulted after she was taken from her home on Lazaretta Road. Ms. Burrows notes that there has been an increasing lack of concern for children, especially young girls who are reported missing.
We see that a lot of times, particularly young girls, maybe between the ages of 13 and 15, go missing. And a lot of times the response by the Bahamian public is, oh, she gone by man. The response should be, oh, she is likely a victim of statutory rape. We need to intervene. We need to charge whoever was associated with that and deal with these issues. Children are not just 5 years old or 4 years old like Bella, who was brutally murdered. Children are not just 11 years old like Marco Archer, who was brutally murdered. There are scores of children that are older, under the age of 18, that we have in our country, and crimes are being committed against them, and they need to be looked at just as seriously as any small child. A baby can be abused in this country, and business goes on as usual. I started along with 4 other women, Stephanie Neon, Leah Head, Erica Morris, and Saran Gibson. In 2009, we heard reports in the Bahamas that a 5-month-old baby girl was raped and died. They came back and said that it was a urinary tract infection. I don't know how a baby gets a urinary tract infection, but at the end of the day, we decided that enough was enough, and child protection needs to be a priority of this government.
Ms. Burrows asks all those who are in support of this cause to sign their petition at change.org/childprotection242. The petition has a list of demands that Rise Bahamas has for the government for the protection of children. The government of the Bahamas, in collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB, has signed a contract with the Bahamas Power and Light Company and the Caribbean Center for Energy and Energy Efficiency for their Integrated Resource and Resilience Plan. Chief Executive Officer of Bahamas Power and Light, Siobhan Cambridge, says the goal is to integrate renewables throughout the Bahamas before 2030.
And basically what the Integrated Resource and Resilience Plan does is look at the assets that the utility has and the goals that we have in terms of migrating to more efficient production, particularly the integration of renewables. And they do that in the most efficient manner. So it looks at how do we retire existing assets, or how do we look at any additional capacity that we need, and the integration of renewables. And this plan is not only just for New Providence, but it also faced how we as a utility evolve throughout the Bahamas and the integration of renewables in the most efficient and effective manner.
The Center for Energy and Energy Efficiency was established in 2018 by the heads of government to help member states navigate the energy transition. Executive Director Dr. Gary Jackson says this plan is essential in helping vulnerable countries bounce back from disasters.
But what is more important is understanding the climate impacts. You will have experienced Dorian, and one of the things that we want to look at is within this plan is looking at mitigation and adaptation strategies that you may need to have given the high heat that you are experiencing now, the hurricanes that you may experience. We may not be resilient in the way that to be able to rebound from the impact in a fast recovery time is a faster way, based on the multiplicity of activities that you will have within this plan. So we are very happy to participate with the government of the Bahamas on this. And we look forward to what we call all hands on deck. Thank you very much.
With the country actively aiming to reach 30% renewables by 2030, Financial Secretary Simon Wilson shared some insight into what this will mean for Bahamians in the future.
One, it's going to lead to more stable cost of electricity. That's the first thing. Number two, it's always going to have a very, very important impact on the climate, because we'll be burning less fossil fuels and burning more renewable energy. All right? And the third thing is that hopefully it's going to lead to, in some aspects, a lower cost. So we have stability in costs, and then we also have a lower cost, which is two different things, but hopefully a lower cost. Those are three big things with renewable energy can do, if done correctly. So,
funding for this project will come from the IDB, the government, and through public-private partnerships. Conservative projections place tourist arrivals to the Bahamas well past the 2019 numbers. Tourism, Investments, and Aviation Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper, revealing as much during the launch event of the Caribbean Investment Forum, noting that the tourism sector continues stellar performance post-pandemic. For the first 6 months of 2023, the Bahamas welcomed more than 5 million visitors by air and sea combined. In April, that number stood at 3.5 million arrivals.
It's good now, and it's getting better. We are seeing a 30% arrivals number ahead of where we were in 2019. 2019, I remind you, was a record-setting year. So, barring an act of God, we're going to break the 8 million visitor arrival mark, and we anticipate that based on the strategies that we're putting in place by the Ministry of Tourism right now, that we're going to exceed the 8 million tourist arrival mark, which would be the best year ever in the history of the Bahamas.
The tourism sector, according to the Deputy Prime Minister, is seeing phenomenal growth supported by aviation. The increase in numbers, particularly by air, may be attributed to the increase in airlift.
We talked about the JetBlue direct from LA. We talked about the direct flights from Seattle and LA on Alaska Airlines. American Airlines announced recently some phenomenal changes, additional flights, daily service from Dallas, daily service from Charlotte to many of the family islands, including Abaco, Exuma, Eleuthera. Today we're seeing announcements from Delta with direct service from Florida to Nassau, daily direct non-stop service from Atlanta to Nassau. This is phenomenal. I invite the stakeholders to brace themselves.
As for concerns expressed by President of the Bahamas Hotel Tourism Association over room shortages, the tourism minister says this.
We are seeing new developments across the islands of the Bahamas. We're anticipating by late November, early December, that the British Colonial is going to be open. You see some demolition work happening in the Cable Beach Strip over the course of the next 12 months. I hope that we see some more tangible movement in that direction. We have Montage coming in Abaco. We have Sampson Key, we have Cave Key, we have Elizabeth Island, we have Torch Key in the Exumas. The future's looking bright.
That was Tourism Minister, Investments and Aviation Minister, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper. American Airlines, in conjunction with the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, announced a massive ramp-up of airlift service to the islands of the Bahamas this winter. According to Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Tourism, Investments and Aviation, Chester Cooper. He said the ministry continues to lead discussions with airlines to introduce new routes and increase flight schedules and seat capacity to meet the ever-increasing demand for the destination here in the Bahamas. He said the exciting expansion by American Airlines, they are aligned with the government's priority to increase air stopover arrivals and create more economic opportunities for local entrepreneurs and industry stakeholders. American Airlines recently announced a new direct service between Miami and Governor's Harbor, Eleuthera, beginning on February 3rd, 2024, with twice weekly flights on Tuesdays and Saturdays. The airline has also unveiled plans to expand existing airlift to destinations across the Bahamas this winter, including to Exuma, Eleuthera, Abaco, Grand Bahama, and right here in the capital, New Providence. According to American Airlines Vice President of Miami Hub Operations, Juan Carlos Liscano, American Airlines is proud to provide its customers with an unparalleled network that includes unique destinations like the Bahamas. And finally, in this segment, with the beautiful Grand Bahama Project initiative by the Davis administration in full swing across the island as the government moves ahead with its mandate to rebuild, revitalize, and restore the island hardest hit by Hurricane Dorian in 2019, Prime Minister Philip Davis, the Minister of Finance, traveled to Grand Bahama on Friday past to get a first-hand look at the island's progress. The Prime Minister toured East Grand Bahama along with Minister for Grand Bahama, Ginger Moxie, Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister with oversight of disaster risk management, Miles LaRota, Senator Kirkland Russell, and James Turner, Chairman of the Disaster Reconstruction Authority, DRA. Alex Storr was also there. Following the assessment, Prime Minister Davis was pleased with the progress and pace of the reconstruction of homes in the storm-stricken areas restored through the project and through the DRA, ultimately bringing relief to residents of East Grand Bahama. He also pointed out that while he is pleased with the progress in East Grand Bahama, government will also be bringing relief to inner-city areas in Freeport and West Grand Bahama with a quicker response time. We'll take a break here. We'll be right back after these commercials.